Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Meridian and looked out at the stars. His ship had been traveling through space for 3 months now. They were part of humanity's third wave of deep space exploration. Jake and his crew were looking for new planets that humans could live on. "Captain, I'm getting something strange," said Lisa Grant from her station. She was the ship's communications officer. Her job was to listen for any signals in space. Jake walked over to her. "What kind of strange?" Lisa frowned at her screens. "It's coming from the third planet in this system. The records say that planet was evacuated 20 years ago, but I'm picking up daily broadcasts." "Daily broadcasts?" Jake asked. "From an empty planet?" "That's what doesn't make sense," Lisa said. "These signals have life readings in them, thousands of life forms. But the galactic records say the Vorthak Confederation evacuated everyone because the star was going to explode." Ben Carter, the science officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, I've been watching this star for the past week. It's completely stable. No signs of any problems at all." Jake felt something cold in his stomach. "Show me those records again." The main screen lit up with official documents. The planet was called Kepler 442c. 23 years ago, the Vorthak Confederation had declared it unsafe. They said solar flares would kill everyone. All residents had to leave immediately. The evacuation was marked as complete. "But if everyone left, who's sending these signals?" Jake asked. Lisa played the audio. Strange clicking and buzzing sounds filled the bridge. "The computer says this is the Cathara language. They're insect-like aliens, part of the Confederation." "What are they saying?" "Daily reports, Captain. Population counts, food supplies, medical status. These aren't old recordings. The timestamps show they're happening right now." Jake stared at the planet on the screen. It looked green and blue, with white clouds. A beautiful world that should be full of life. "How many life forms did you say?" "About 3,000, sir." 3,000 people left behind, Jake whispered. He turned to his crew. "That's not an evacuation. That's abandonment." Ben Carter checked his readings again. "Captain, there's more. I'm reading children in those signals. Young ones. That means babies were born after the so-called evacuation." The bridge went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. These people hadn't just been left behind by accident. They had been living on this planet for over 20 years, believing they were forgotten. "Sir," said Susan Walsh, his first officer, "Confederation space law says we can't interfere with their internal affairs." Jake looked at her. "And human law says we don't ignore people in trouble." "Captain, this could start a war," Susan warned. "And ignoring this could end a species," Jake replied. He made his decision. "Lisa, send a message to that planet. Let them know we're here." "What should I say?" "Tell them help has arrived." Lisa worked at her station for several minutes. Finally, she looked up. "Message sent, Captain. Using standard first contact protocols." They waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Jake was starting to think no one would answer. Then Lisa's station lit up. "Captain, we have a response." "Put it on speakers." The voice that came through was translated by the ship's computer. It sounded old and tired, but filled with sudden hope. "Unknown vessel, this is Elder Zekth of Haven Colony. We have not heard from anyone in the stars for 23 years. Are you real? Please tell us you are real." Jake felt his throat tighten. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship Meridian. We are real, and we are here to help." A long pause. Then sounds that the computer couldn't translate. Jake realized the alien was crying. "Captain Morrison, we thought. We believed our people forgot us, left us here to die when the star problems came. But the star never caused problems. We have survived, but barely. Many of our children have never seen the stars." "How many of you are there?" Jake asked. 3,047 souls, Captain, including 800 young ones born after the leaving." Jake closed his eyes. 800 children who had never known any world but this one, never known that there were others like them among the stars. "Elder Zekth, can you tell us what happened? Why were you left behind?" Another long pause. When the voice came back, it was full of shame and anger. We were told we were different, Captain. Not pure enough for the New Worlds. The Confederation said our genetic line was weak. We were supposed to die here when the star exploded, but the star never exploded. We realized we were thrown away. Ben Carter's face went white. Captain, they're talking about genocide. Jake nodded grimly. Elder Zeketh, we're coming down to your planet. We want to help. Captain Morrison, the Confederation has ships that patrol this area. If they find you here, let me worry about the Confederation, Jake said. You've been alone long enough. As Jake ended the transmission, Susan walked over to him. Sir, this is bigger than just one abandoned colony. If the Confederation is throwing away their own people, then we need to know how many others are out there, Jake finished. And we need to decide what kind of neighbors we want to be in this galaxy. He looked around at his crew. All of them had the same expression. Determination mixed with anger. They had found something horrible happening among the stars. But they had also found people who needed help. Ben, scan the planet. I want to know everything about their situation. Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we've found. Susan, prep a shuttle team. Where are we going, Captain? Susan asked. Jake looked at the planet on the screen. Somewhere down there, 3,000 beings had been waiting 23 years for someone to remember they existed. We're going to bring some people home. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stepped off the shuttle onto the surface of Kepler 442c. The air was warm and smelled like flowers mixed with something she couldn't identify. Around her, the other humans from the Meridian looked around in wonder. The Kythera settlement spread out before them. It was unlike anything Amy had ever seen. The buildings looked like they were grown rather than built. Smooth, curved walls rose from the ground in organic shapes. Gardens filled every space between structures. Welcome to Haven Colony, said Elder Zekth. The alien stood about as tall as Amy, with 4 arms and a body covered in shimmering green plates. His large, compound eyes reflected the sunlight like jewels. Amy tried not to stare. She had studied alien biology, but seeing a living Kythera was different than reading about them. Your settlement is beautiful, she said honestly. Zekth's antennae twitched in what Amy guessed was pleasure. We have had 23 years to make it so. When you have nowhere else to go, you make the best of where you are. Engineer Pete Johnson knelt down next to a strange device that seemed to be pulling water from the air. How does this work? A younger Kythera approached. I am Weaver Zixel. I designed these machines. We take moisture from the air and clean it. The old machines from our ships broke years ago. We had to learn to build new ones. Pete studied the device with professional interest. This is incredibly efficient. You're getting more water per hour than our best recyclers. We had to be efficient, Zixal said simply. Or we would die. Amy watched children playing nearby. They looked like smaller versions of the adults, but their colors were brighter. Some had patterns she had never seen in the database files about Kythera. Elder Zekth, she said carefully, these children, they look different from the standard Kythera appearance in our records. The old alien's mood darkened. Yes, that is why we are here instead of with our people. The Confederation decided our genetic line was impure. We have patterns and colors they did not want to spread to other worlds. Amy felt sick. They abandoned you because of how you look? Because of how our children would look, Zekth corrected. They said we would weaken the species, so they told us the star would kill us all and left us here to die quietly. Pete looked up from the water machine. But you didn't die. No, we adapted. We survived. Our children grew up strong and smart. Look around you, Dr. Rodriguez. Do we look weak to you? Amy looked at the thriving settlement. Gardens full of food, clean, water systems, happy children playing games, art decorating the walls of buildings, music drifting from somewhere nearby. You look like people who refuse to give up, she said. Back on the Meridian, Commander Susan Walsh was listening to radio chatter from across the galaxy. What she heard made her blood run cold. Captain Morrison, you need to hear this, she called over the ship's comm system. Jake arrived on the bridge within minutes. What did you find? I've been monitoring Confederation communications. This isn't the first abandoned colony, sir. Listen to this. Susan played a recorded message between two Confederation officers. The computer translated their alien language into English. Relocation of Zenth Prime complete. All approved genetic lines evacuated successfully. What about the unfit populations? Left behind as planned. Solar Storm Story worked perfectly. No questions asked. How many facilities were abandoned this time? 17,000 individuals across 3 settlements. They should be extinct within 5 years. The recording ended. Jake stared at the speaker in horror. 17,000 people, he whispered. How many other colonies are out there? Finding references to dozens of operations like this, Susan said. The Confederation has been doing this for decades. They call it genetic optimization through natural selection. They call it murder, Jake said angrily. What else did you find? Bad news, Captain. A Confederation patrol fleet is heading this way. Admiral Thysakar is commanding 12 ships. They'll be here in 6 hours. Jake felt his stomach drop. They know we're here? Our communications to Earth were intercepted. They're coming to clean up the mess. What kind of mess? Susan looked grim. Us. They can't let word about the abandoned colonies get out. If other species in the galaxy knew what the Confederation was doing, there would be revolts, Jake finished. How long until our message reaches Earth? Another 8 hours. We'll be facing the Confederation fleet alone. Jake thought quickly. 12 ships against 1. Not good odds. But he couldn't leave the Kythera behind. Not after learning what he had learned. Susan, contact Dr. Rodriguez on the surface. Tell her to speed up her assessment. We need to know if these people can be moved quickly. Moved where, Captain? We can't outrun 12 ships. Maybe we can't run, Jake said, but we can try something else. On the planet's surface, Amy was learning just how remarkable the Kythera had become. They had not just survived abandonment, they had thrived. Show her the learning chambers, Elder Zekth said to one of the younger adults. Amy was led into a building filled with strange equipment. Young Kythera sat at stations, manipulating holographic displays with their 4 hands. We had to teach our children everything, explained the teacher, a Kythera named Hickson. History, science, art, philosophy, everything the Confederation would have taught them on the homeworld. But you're cut off from their educational networks, Amy said. So we created our own, better ones. Our children learn faster than Confederation youth. They are more creative, more adaptable. Amy watched a child who couldn't be more than 10 years old design a complex mechanical device in the hologram. Now, another world, she realized. This child would have been killed for being genetically inferior. Dr. Rodriguez, Pete's voice came through her comm device. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The captain wants to know if these people can be evacuated quickly, like in the next few hours. Amy looked around at the vast settlement, 3,000 people, complex equipment, grown buildings that couldn't be moved. That's impossible, Pete. This isn't just their home, it's their whole world. Well, we might not have a choice. Confederation ships are coming. Elder Zekth's antennae had been picking up the human conversation. Dr. Rodriguez, we understand. You tried to help us, but we will not run again. What do you mean? We have been running for 23 years, running from who we are, running from what others think we should be. If the Confederation wants to finish what they started, let them come. Elder, you don't understand. They have warships, weapons, and we have something they do not. The old Kythera said firmly. What's that? We have nothing left to lose, and we have friends now. He looked at Amy with his compound eyes. Don't we, Dr. Rodriguez? Amy felt something change inside her. These people had been abandoned once. She would not abandon them again. Yes, she said. You have friends, and friends don't leave friends behind. She activated her comm device. Captain Morrison, this is Dr. Rodriguez. Go ahead, Doctor. Sir, I'm recommending we stay and fight. A pause. Then Jake's voice came back, filled with determination. I was hoping you'd say that, Doctor, because I just sent a message to every ship in the human fleet. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you abandon children among the stars. Captain Jake Morrison watched the stars and waited. The Confederation fleet would arrive in 2 hours, his single ship against 12 enemy vessels. The smart thing would be to run. The safe thing would be to leave the Kythera and save his crew. Jake had never been very good at doing the smart thing. Captain, Lisa Grant called from her station. I'm picking up new signals. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Jake's heart sank. The Confederation fleet is early? No, sir. These are human ships, a lot of them. The main screen lit up with contacts. 1 ship became 2, then 5, then 10. Jake counted 12 human vessels appearing in the system. This is Admiral Karen Phillips aboard the UES Constitution, came a voice over the comm. Jake Morrison, you've started quite a stir back home. Jake couldn't believe it. Admiral Phillips, what are you doing here? Bringing you back up, Captain, and bringing transport ships. President Martinez has declared those Kythera colonists refugees under human protection. Refugees? As of 6 hours ago, any being abandoned by their government, for genetic reasons, can request asylum with humanity. Congratulations, Jake, you just changed human foreign policy. Jake felt dizzy. Ma'am, the Confederation won't like this. I'm counting on it, Admiral Phillips said grimly. It's time someone stood up to these genocidal monsters. On the planet's surface, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was helping the Kythera prepare for what might come. But she wasn't preparing them to hide. She was preparing them to fight. Your defense systems are impressive, said Chief Medical Officer Dr. Chris Baker, who had arrived with the new fleet. He was examining Kythera weapons that looked more like art than tools of war. We are peaceful people, Elder Zekth explained, but 23 years of abandonment teaches you to protect what you have. Weaver Zixel demonstrated one of their energy weapons. It fired a beam of blue light that cut through a metal plate like it was paper. We learned to make these from salvaged ship parts, she said proudly. The Confederation thinks we are weak because we look different. They are wrong. Amy watched Kythera children helping to move equipment. Even the youngest ones worked with focus and purpose. These were not helpless refugees. These were survivors. Dr. Rodriguez, one of the Kythera, called. The skyships are coming. Amy looked up to see lights moving among the stars. The Confederation fleet had arrived. In space, Admiral Tissacar looked at his tactical display with confusion. He had expected to find 1 human ship and some abandoned insects. Instead, he faced 12 human vessels in battle formation. Human ships, you are trespassing in Confederation space, he broadcast. Withdraw immediately and surrender the Kythera terrorists for proper justice. Captain Nicole Brown, commanding the heavy cruiser UES Liberty, answered for the human fleet. Admiral Tissacar, those beings requested asylum from abandonment and certain death. That request is granted under human law. We don't recognize the authority of any government that practices genocide. Those creatures are Confederation property, Tissacar replied angrily. They were removed from society for the good of the species. They were abandoned to die because you didn't like how they looked, Nicole shot back. And now you're angry because they survived. On his bridge, Tissacar activated his weapon systems. Human Captain, you have 10 seconds to withdraw or face the consequences. Admiral, Nicole said calmly, you can fire the first shot. But understand this, when you do, you'll be starting a war with humanity. And we don't abandon our friends. The seconds ticked by. Tissacar hesitated. Starting a war over some abandoned insects seemed extreme, but letting the humans interfere would set a dangerous precedent. He made his choice. Fire, he ordered. Energy beams lanced out from the Confederation ships toward the human fleet. The Battle of Kepler 442 had begun. Pilot, Officer Ryan Clark led his squadron of human fighters against the incoming fire. The Confederation ships were bigger and more powerful, but human pilots had advantages the aliens didn't expect. Remember your training, Ryan called to his squadron. We're miners and salvagers. We know how to work in asteroid fields. Use the environment. The human fighters scattered into the system's asteroid belt. The larger Confederation ships couldn't follow without risking damage to their hulls. What are they doing? Thysakar demanded as human fighters seemed to disappear among the floating rocks. His question was answered when asteroids began exploding around his fleet. The humans had placed mining charges throughout the belt and were using them as weapons. Clever. Hunkies, Thysakar admitted grimly. But tricks won't save them. On the planet's surface, the battle could be seen as flashes of light in the sky. Amy stood with Elder Zeketh and watched humans fighting for people they had met only days ago. Why? The old Kythera asked quietly. Why do your people risk so much for us? Amy thought about the question. Why were humans willing to start a war over abandoned aliens? Why had their government changed its policies overnight? Why was she standing here instead of safely aboard a ship heading home? Because, she said finally, we know what it's like to be alone in the dark. Humans spent thousands of years thinking we were the only intelligent life in the universe. When we finally found others, we decided never to let anyone feel that alone again. Even if those others look different? Especially if they look different, Amy said firmly. Differences make us stronger. Your people proved that by surviving here. You created things the Confederation never could have imagined. In space, the battle was turning. The human fleet was smaller, but they fought with desperation and cleverness. Commander Tony Garcia's destroyer squadron used construction mechs as weapons, turning industrial tools into instruments of war. Admiral Phillips came a call from the UES Meridian. We're receiving a broadcast from the planet. Elder Zekth wants to speak to both fleets. Put him through, Admiral Phillips ordered. The voice of the old Kythera filled the comm channels of both human and Confederation ships. I am Elder Zekth of Haven Colony, he began. For 23 years, my people have lived with the knowledge that our own species considered us unworthy of life. We have survived abandonment, starvation, and despair. Now humans fight for us. Beings we have never met risk their lives because they believe we deserve to exist. This touches our hearts in ways your language cannot express. But we do not want humans to die for us. We want to live with them, to share what we have learned, to show the galaxy that abandoned does not mean defeated. Admiral Thysakar, you tried to erase us from history. But we are still here. We are still alive. And now we have allies who believe that different is not wrong. Thysakar listened to the broadcast with growing unease. This was not how abandonments were supposed to work. The inferior populations were supposed to die quietly, not survive and make speeches. Confederation fleet, prepare for full assault, he ordered. But before his ships could attack, another voice came over the comm channels. It was communications specialist Rachel Stone aboard the UES Meridian. Attention all ships and planets in this sector. We are broadcasting evidence of Confederation abandonment policies to the galactic news networks. The galaxy will know the truth about genetic cleansing operations. Thysakar's blood went cold. If other species learned about the abandonment protocols, the Confederation would face revolts across dozens of worlds. Cut that transmission, he screamed, but it was too late. The truth was spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 17 worlds, populations that the Confederation had marked for abandonment were hearing that they were not alone. As Thysakar watched his carefully maintained secrets crumble, he realized that the humans had done something far worse than rescue one colony of abandoned Kythera. They had given hope to every unwanted population in the galaxy, and hope, Thysakar knew from bitter experience, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Battle of Kepler 442 had been raging for 2 days. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Martin crouched behind a makeshift barrier on Haven Colony's surface, watching Confederation drop ships land in the distance. They're not just trying to destroy the colony anymore, he reported to Admiral Phillips through his comm device. They're trying to capture it. They want to take the Kythera alive. Probably to make an example of them, Admiral Phillips replied grimly. Show other abandoned populations what happens when they resist. Steve looked around at the Kythera defenders beside him. Elder Zekth held an energy weapon that hummed with power. Young Weaver Zixel had modified construction equipment into mobile shields. Even the children were helping, carrying supplies and medical equipment. "Admiral, these people aren't victims anymore," Steve said. "They're fighters." "Good," Admiral Phillips responded, "because we're going to need every fighter we can get." In space above the planet, Commander Tony Garcia watched his destroyer squadron dance between asteroids and enemy fire. The Confederation had brought reinforcements. 30 ships now faced the human fleet of 12. "Commander Garcia," came a voice over the comm. It was Dr. Helen Murphy from the UES Constitution. "I need you to protect my shuttle. I'm taking a team down to the planet. Doctor, the surface is a war zone right now. That's exactly why I need to be there. The Cathara have technology we've never seen. If we can combine it with our systems." Tony understood immediately. "You want to even the odds. I want to change the game entirely." On the planet's surface, Dr. Murphy's team landed near the Cathara technology centers. Amy Rodriguez met them at the landing site. "Helen, what are you doing here?" Amy asked her colleague. "Saving the day, hopefully," Helen replied, pulling equipment from her shuttle. "Amy, you said the Cathara developed new manufacturing techniques. I need to see them." Amy led Helen to where Weaver Zixal was building weapons in real time. The young Cathara's forearms moved in perfect coordination, assembling complex devices from raw materials in minutes. "Incredible," Helen breathed. "Zixal, how fast can you build communication equipment?" "What kind do you need?" Zixal asked, without stopping her work. "The kind that can reach every abandoned colony in the galaxy at the same time." Zixal's compound eyes focused on Helen with sudden intensity. "You want to talk to all the forgotten ones?" "I want to organize them." For the first time since Helen had met her, Zixal smiled. "I can build such a device, but I will need help." "You'll have it," Helen promised. 3 hours later, a new kind of signal began broadcasting from Haven Colony. It reached across the galaxy on quantum frequencies that the Confederation couldn't block or trace. Communications specialist Rachel Stone coordinated the transmission from the Meridian. Her screens lit up with responses from dozens of worlds. "Admiral Phillips?" she called excitedly. "We're getting answers. Abandoned populations on 43 worlds are responding to our signal." "What are they saying?" "They're asking for instructions. They want to know how to fight back." Admiral Phillips felt a chill of responsibility. 43 worlds full of abandoned beings were looking to humanity for leadership. It was both terrifying and inspiring. "Put me through to all of them," she ordered. The quantum network carried her voice to every forgotten corner of the galaxy. "This is Admiral Karen Phillips of the human fleet. To every abandoned soul hearing this message, you are not alone anymore. The Confederation told you that you were unfit to live. They were wrong. The only thing unfit here is a government that throws away its own people. We cannot promise the fight will be easy. We cannot promise there won't be losses. But we can promise this: no one who stands with us will stand alone." On a water world called Nereid, aquatic beings who had been abandoned for having impure gills listened to the human admiral's words. They began swimming toward their planet's communication arrays. On the crystal planet Quartz Prime, silicon-based life forms that had been written off as evolutionary dead ends started powering up broadcasting equipment they had built from salvaged parts. Across the galaxy, the Forgotten began to remember that they had voices. Admiral Thysakar watched his strategic situation collapse in real time. What had started as a simple cleanup operation had become a galaxy-wide rebellion. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 worlds. Abandoned populations are seizing government facilities and broadcasting stations. How many ships do we have available for suppression operations?" "That's the problem, sir. Every fleet is already committed to containing other revolts. We're fighting brush fires on 40 different worlds." Thysakar stared at his tactical display. Red alerts covered half the galaxy, all because one human ship had decided to help some abandoned insects. "Admiral," another officer called, "the High Council is demanding a full report. They want to know how the situation developed so quickly." Thysakar almost laughed. "How did You explained to the government that their victims had organized themselves? How did you tell the High Council that genocide was a lot harder when the targets fought back? Tell the High Council, he said finally, that we have underestimated both the humans and our own abandoned populations. Back on Haven Colony, the ground battle had taken on a strange character. Instead of trying to destroy Kythera positions, Confederation troops were attempting to capture them intact. They wanted prisoners, not corpses. Steve Martin realized what this meant. They're planning a show trial, he told Elder Zekth during a brief ceasefire. Capture you, put you on trial for terrorism, execute you publicly to scare other abandoned populations. Then we must not be captured, Zekth replied simply. Easier said than done. They have us outnumbered 3-1. Zekth's antennae twitched in what Steve had learned was amusement. Colonel Martin, you think like a soldier. We think like survivors. What's the difference? Soldiers fight battles. Survivors change the rules. As if summoned by Zekth's words, the ground began to vibrate. Steve looked around in confusion until he saw them coming over the horizon. Construction mechs. Dozens of them. The massive machines that the Kythera used for building their organic structures were marching toward the battlefield like mechanical giants. We are not just farmers and artists, Zekth explained as Steve stared in awe. We are builders, and builders know how to unmake things as well as make them. The first construction mech reached the Confederation lines and began systematically dismantling their equipment. Energy barriers that had protected enemy troops dissolved under tools designed to reshape matter at the molecular level. This is impossible, Steve heard a Confederation officer say over the captured radio channels. Industrial equipment can't be used as weapons. Someone should tell the Kythera that, Steve replied, even though the alien couldn't hear him. In space, the tide of battle was turning as well. Dr. Murphy's collaboration with Kythera engineers had produced new weapons that the Confederation had never seen before, energy beams that could phase through shields, missiles that rebuilt themselves after being shot down, defensive fields that turned enemy fire into power for human systems. How is this possible? Admiral Thisakar demanded as his flagship's weapons proved useless against human shields. His science officer looked terrified. Sir, they're using principles we don't understand. It's like they're rewriting the laws of physics. That's impossible. Tell that to our weapon systems, Admiral. Nothing we have can penetrate their new defenses. What Thisakar didn't understand was that the Kythera hadn't rewritten physics. They had simply learned to think about it differently during their 23 years of abandonment. When you have limited resources and unlimited time, you learn to be creative. When your survival depends on making the impossible work, you discover that impossible is just another word for untried. As the third day of battle dawned, the situation had completely reversed. The Confederation fleet was trapped in the system, surrounded by human ships and unable to break through the new defensive technologies. On the planet's surface, Confederation ground forces were retreating to their landing zones, pursued by construction mechs and determined Kythera defenders. Admiral Thisakar, came Admiral Phillips's voice over the communication channels. This is your final opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Human Admiral, Thisakar replied wearily. You have no idea what you've started. Yes, I do, Admiral, Phillips said firmly. We've started the end of your abandonment policies. We've started a galaxy where different doesn't mean disposable. And Admiral, she added, we've started something that's going to spread to every world where people have been told they don't matter. Mark my words, Thisakar. This isn't the end of the war for dignity. This is just the beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Ambassador Frank Turner stood in the Great Assembly Hall of New Haven Colony. The space station floating in Earth's solar system had become a symbol of hope for abandoned populations across the galaxy. Around him, representatives from dozens of species talked in languages the universal translator was still learning to understand. Aquatic Nereids floated in water-filled spheres. Crystalline Quartzians sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Former Confederation subjects who had been written off as genetic failures now served as equals in the growing alliance. The Haven Doctrine has been ratified by 47 worlds, Frank announced to the assembly. Any government that practices abandonment or genetic cleansing forfeits its right to govern those populations. Elder Zeketh, now serving as the first alien ambassador to humanity, clicked his approval. 6 months ago, my people believed we were alone and forgotten. Today we help coordinate rescue missions to 12 other abandoned worlds. In the audience, Dr. Amy Rodriguez smiled as she watched Kythera children playing with human kids and young Nereids. The children didn't care about different colors or shapes or the number of limbs someone had. They just cared about having friends. Dr. Rodriguez called engineer Sally Brooks, who had designed much of the station. The new refugees from Sigma Draconis have arrived. They're asking for you specifically. Amy made her way to the docking bay, where another group of survivors was arriving. These were Vorthak, the same species as the Confederation leaders who had abandoned the Kythera. But these Vorthak had been thrown away for being too emotional and lacking proper aggression. Dr. Rodriguez said their leader, a gentle-looking alien named Corvin. We heard about what humans did for the Kythera. We hoped you might help us too. You don't need to hope, Amy said warmly. You're safe now. Welcome to the Alliance. As she helped the new refugees find temporary housing, Amy reflected on how much had changed. The Confederation still existed, but it was a shadow of its former power. 3/4 of its member worlds had revolted when they learned about the abandonment policies. Many had joined the growing Refugee Protection Alliance. On the command deck of the exploration vessel New Meridian, Captain Jake Morrison studied a star chart with his mixed human Kythera crew. His ship was one of 12 vessels in the Galactic Rescue Corps, searching for abandoned populations throughout the galaxy. Captain called his communications officer, a young Kythera named Hickson who had been trained by Lisa Grant. We're receiving a distress signal from the Andromeda border. Another abandonment? It looks like it, sir. A population of about 8,000. They've been isolated for 15 years. Jake nodded to his helmsman, a human woman named Jennifer Clark. Set course. For the signal. Maximum speed. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about his daughter Sarah, who was serving aboard another rescue ship. The second generation was taking up the mission now. Children who had grown up knowing that the galaxy was full of different kinds of people, all worthy of protection. In the outer rim of the galaxy, Admiral Tissakar sat in his small office aboard a patrol ship. He no longer commanded fleets. The Confederation had stripped him of rank when they made him a scapegoat for the abandoned population crisis. But Tissakar had learned something during the war with humanity. He had learned that strength came from unity, not purity. Admiral, his aide said quietly. The young Vorthak still used his old title out of respect. We're receiving a transmission from the Human Alliance. They're offering us asylum. Tissakar looked up from his reports. Asylum? They say any Confederation military personnel who defect will be welcomed. No questions asked. They're offering us a chance to help with rescue operations. Tissakar thought about his career. Decades of enforcing policies he had never really believed in. Following orders to abandon entire populations because they didn't meet someone else's definition of perfection. Send a reply, he said finally. Tell them Admiral Tissakar requests permission to join the Galactic Rescue Corps. Sir? I've spent my life throwing people away, Tissakar explained. Maybe it's time I learned how to bring them home. On Earth, President Martinez stood before the Global Assembly to address humanity's role in the changing galaxy. When we first ventured into space, she said, we wondered what we would find among the stars. We found intelligence, we found beauty, we found diversity beyond our wildest dreams. But we also found cruelty. We found governments that valued genetic purity over individual worth. We found entire populations abandoned because they were different. Today, I'm proud to announce that the last of the known abandoned colonies has been evacuated and resettled. But our work is not finished. As long as there are beings in this galaxy who are told they don't matter because of how they look, how they think, or where they come from, humanity will stand with them. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest or the most advanced. But we have something that makes us unique. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth. On New Haven Station, Dr. Paul Johnson, the former communications officer who now commanded the Rescue Corps, was training new volunteers. His latest class included humans, Kythera, reformed Vorthak, aquatic Nereids, and a dozen other species. Your mission, he told them, is simple to state and hard to accomplish. Find the forgotten, help the abandoned, show the galaxy that different is not wrong. Some of you are former refugees yourselves. Others come from species that never faced abandonment. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here, ready to ensure no sentient being is ever again left alone among the stars. In the audience, young Lieutenant Sarah Morrison raised her hand. Commander Johnson, what do we do when we encounter species that still practice abandonment? Paul smiled. The same thing my generation did, Lieutenant. We show them there's a better way. And if they refuse to listen, we make sure their victims know they have friends in the galaxy. Remember, he added, looking around at the diverse group of faces before him. 6 months ago, a single human ship found one abandoned colony. Today, we have 47 worlds in our alliance and growing. Never underestimate the power of refusing to accept that anyone is disposable. As the training session ended, Paul walked to the observation deck of the station. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see Earth below, surrounded by ships from dozens of worlds. Transport vessels carrying refugees to new homes. Exploration. Ships heading out to search for more abandoned populations. Construction ships building new stations for growing communities. The galaxy was changing. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together. Populations that had been written off as failures were contributing their unique knowledge and abilities to solve problems no single species could handle alone. It had all started with one captain making a simple decision. Help had arrived. As Paul watched, a new ship arrived at the station. Through the viewport, he could see excited beings pressing against the windows, looking at their new home. Another group of forgotten people who would be forgotten no more. His communication device chirped with an incoming message from a Rescue Corps ship in distant space. Commander Johnson, this is Captain Rodriguez aboard the UES Sanctuary. We found them, sir. Another abandoned colony. 15,000 beings who thought they were alone. How long until they can be evacuated? Paul asked. They don't want to be evacuated, sir. They want to join the Corps. They want to help us find others. Paul smiled. The cycle continued. The rescued becoming the rescuers. The abandoned becoming the ones who ensured no one else would be abandoned. Approved, Captain Rodriguez. Welcome them to the family. As he ended the transmission, Paul thought about the Kythera children playing in the station's gardens. Some of them had been born in abandonment, believing they were the last of their kind. Now they were growing up in a galaxy where diversity was celebrated, where being different was seen as valuable. The Confederation still existed in reduced form, but they had quietly discontinued their abandonment policies. Other species were watching the Alliance's success and reconsidering their own practices. Change was spreading through the galaxy like ripples in a pond. And at the center of those ripples was a simple human belief. Everyone matters, everyone has value, and no one should ever be left behind. The stars no longer held forgotten souls crying out in the darkness. Now they held a network of friends, always listening, always ready to answer when someone called for help. The galaxy would never be the same.